Hello, I'm David Imiri. For over 30 years, I've been guiding individuals and couples into deeper contact with themselves, each other, and what is most real. There are moments when something in us senses we're not quite where we think we are, not fully here, not fully in contact with what's real. And yet, there's also something in us that knows the feeling of being more present, more grounded, more fully ourselves. In this exploration, I want to invite you into a different way of relating to your experience, not as something to analyze or figure out, but as something that can be entered more directly, more fully, and more accurately, as if it were a landscape, one we can actually learn to orient within. So, for this time together, there's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to get right, just a willingness to notice what's already here. Join me in a few long, slow, deep, gentle, connected breaths. Breathing, feeling, receiving. Simple presence, here and now. Being aware of your presence, aware of your body, the breath moving in and out of your body, aware of the weight of your body on the seat beneath you. Breathing, feeling, receiving. Just this, here, now, just so. Coming to rest in your heart. Because a lot of the times we think that we're the person up here between our ears and behind our eyes. Hi, I'm up here. That's me. I have a heart. I have a body. I can check in with them. But what if we're not a head that has a heart? What if we're a heart that has a head and a body? And that's us. Where we can feel the oxygen in the air hitting our lungs on each breath, which spreads through our chest like a gentle radiance, helping us relax and come to rest here in our heart, where it feels good. Thank you for joining me. Greetings. Welcome to Navigating the Landscape of Experience. I'm about to take you on a journey that I hope will illuminate a more vivid way of engaging with the inner contents of your experience and making sense of what you find there. Some of what I share may challenge assumptions or orientations you hold, consciously or otherwise. Some of it may sound familiar, like something you've already heard before. But I'm going to ask you to do your best to set aside what you already know and encounter this with a beginner's mind, to consider it experientially as well as cognitively, to hold these ideas as seeds that may continue to expand and provoke inquiry in the days and weeks ahead. I chose the title Navigating the Landscape of Experience because I do see experience as a landscape with different structures, layers, and dimensions that can come into focus when we're equipped with good maps for sense making, but always prioritizing our direct impressions of experience itself, groping our way towards direct embodied contact and communion, holding presence and direct contact as the highest values. Now, the first distinction I want to bring your attention to is the distinction between concepts and phenomena. This is the difference between the map and the territory, the menu and the meal, the contents of our mind and the contents of reality itself. No matter our level of development, reality is always the master, and we are always the student, the scientist, the explorer. As our journey begins in infancy, we have very little understanding of experience, only the swirl of direct impressions. As our journey unfolds, we accumulate layers of understanding, a structure of meanings whose elements form in many ways. Some through the impact of strong experiences, some through maps we pick up from others explicitly or implicitly, by watching how they move through life. And this inner lattice work of understanding grows, and it matters. We need it. It helps us orient within the world, but it can also become a buffering layer between us and reality itself. And if we're interested in awakening, mastery, or deeper contact with life, this becomes a substantial impediment. We must learn to return to direct communion with phenomena itself, to encounter the forces and filters that mediate our connectedness, to recognize them, relax them, and strengthen our direct contact with what is real. The first layer of our inner structure that presents itself is the layer of our stories, narratives, interpretations, and labels. This is a layer we often live in, and one that most readily captures our attention. We have an experience, a direct impression, and without even realizing it, apparent understanding begins to arise out of the web of associations we carry with us. But as soon as we tell ourselves, I know what that is, our attentiveness drops into a far more limited mode of contact. We place experience in a box and move on, believing we know where we are, what is happening, and what is needed. And often, we're not entirely correct. Sometimes in small ways, sometimes in very large ones. And even when we are partly right, we deprive ourselves of the heightened presence that comes from reaching out with our senses to know something more directly, more fully, and more freshly. Now, a brief reflection. What story are you telling yourself right now about this experience you're having? About this presentation? What labels are you placing on it? What narratives are forming? Pause for a moment and notice. Stories, narratives, interpretations, and labels do not come from nowhere. They arise from the things that have left the strongest impacts in the development of our inner structure. These become the architecture and scaffolding of our inner world, silently shaping what we see, what we can see, and how we move through life. These things are beliefs, conditioning, identities, and trauma. They're the primary forces that interrupt, mediate, distort, and shape our direct contact with what is real. They function as dissociative processes, displacing living contact and connected movement with conditioned patterns and canned routines. Even beliefs that are accurate distance us from direct contact with what the belief is about, here and now. Together, they form our structuralized sense of self, a false personality. This is also why I find them more useful than the vague notion of an ego. An ego is not an actual thing I've ever found. It's a concept. And depending on the tradition, it's seen as the villain in spirituality and the hero in psychology, creating much unnecessary confusion. These four things, by contrast, beliefs, conditioning, identities, and trauma, are tangible phenomena we can actually locate and work with precisely. Conditioning and trauma become embedded in us, not just in our minds, but in our bodies and our energy systems through the impact of experiences. Beliefs and identities form within ourselves in response to what we have lived. And an identity is just the deepest type of belief, a belief about what we are, a self-image, not the living experience of our actual self. Take a moment to consider a few words or phrases that define who you think you are, who you identify as, who you frequently tell yourself you are. And notice how these have been shaped by repeated or powerful experiences from the past and by the beliefs formed around them. Whatever we think we are is a case of mistaken identity, in contrast with our actual living experience of ourselves. Let's change direction for a moment and reflect on what is real. All these things we've considered are real phenomena, but they're hidden phenomena, structures that shape how we experience, how we interpret experience, and how we respond to experience. What's most real is what is essential. But how we come to know it, at least initially, is through the aliveness it moves in us, what I call charge. Charge is the felt movement of life within us. We all know it comes in both positive and negative flavors, a movement towards and a movement away. But even negative charge, aversion, is secretly a positive movement too. It's a movement towards something by moving away from what seems opposed to it, like moving away from threat toward safety, away from pain toward relief, away from constriction toward freedom. So all charge is, in a deeper sense, positive charge, the aliveness in us moving toward what matters, toward the things that motivate us, toward our needs, desires, longings, and values. Now take a moment and notice something in your life you feel strongly drawn toward. Breathe that in. Savor that. Now notice something you've been pulling away from, resisting, or avoiding. What is it you really want to move towards in moving away from that? Feel the energy in both movements, the movement toward, the movement away. Notice that both are forms of aliveness. Both are charge. Both are life moving. And both are really moving towards something. All the movement of our aliveness gets its energy, force, and direction from these sources of charge, needs, desires, longings, and values. And the more we follow these sources of charge inward to their pure underlying impulses and disentangle them from the layers we've already discussed, the more directly this charge becomes available to us as a source of momentum toward the good. It is then experienced as unblocked, undivided passion and drive. The more we follow these sources of charge inward and purify them of the veils, distortions, concretized destinations, and inhibitions born of stories, narratives, interpretations, and labels formed on beliefs, conditioning, identities, and trauma, the more we can trust this pure movement within us. A living flow of energy moving us spontaneously through life into accurate and appropriate right action, guided by the meeting of what is arising within us with what is actually here around us, giving us direction into a Tao we can trust and surrender to, a movement we no longer need to second guess. These sources of charge, in their pure and integrated forms, especially when held and channeled through the heart, become a profound guide, bringing passion, exhilaration, effectiveness, and increasingly pleasure and mastery in all things. Now, of these sources of charge that give direction to our aliveness, our needs, desires, longings, and values are actually the deepest and a special case. All of these can be followed inward and distilled towards their purest forms, and the closer into their nature we get, the more universal they are. But there is something more real than the movement of energy. What is most real is our essence, our spiritual nature, which has a myriad of facets or aspects through which it expresses different qualities of energy and different domains of intent, which arise spontaneously in response to what is needed. And when we follow values inward to their essential nature, to their universal dimension, not the values we inherit through social conditioning or cultural moral systems, but the essential values that all human beings can feel, we begin to discover that these are expressions of aspects of our essence itself. They're not socially constructed at all. They're baked into the cookie at the source. What we most deeply value is not separate from what we most deeply are. These universal values are an aligning force on our needs, desires, and longings, bringing them into line with our deeper nature and with the greater good, not just for us, but in our connection with the life all around us. This becomes an ongoing inquiry in the course of daily life, cultivating the spaciousness and presence to notice the forces shaping and structuralizing our relationship with experience and how we move within it. Because, like the old fairy tale, if you learn the name of the monster, it loses its power over you. And by seeing these effects clearly and in accurate detail, we become more fully present with what we are actually experiencing. The grip of the underlying architecture can loosen, and the sensations it was constructed to defend against in the first place can begin to arise and circulate, to be metabolized, integrated, and brought home into wholeness. Essence returns to more and more of us, our authentic being, the living qualities and capacities already within us, in our nature, and a fluid immersion into an ever more connected space where inside and outside come together. I call this sacred union. And yes, this equates with states of realization named in many traditions. It's only through increasing embodiment of this sacred union within ourselves that new possibilities open to relate from this place with others, with life, and where love invites it, with an intimate partner. This brings the tantric dimension into focus, where relationship becomes a path of healing, awakening, and profound joy. As we come to close, I'd like to invite you to notice something simple. Right now, in this moment, the whole landscape is already here. All these landmarks we've noticed. There are sensations in the body, thoughts arising and passing, emotions, moods, movements of energy, stories, interpretations, and labels appearing, needs, desires, longings, and values moving beneath the surface, and deeper still, the qualities of essence quietly present in the fabric of experience. All of it here at once. And now perhaps we can see more clearly. We're not lost inside the landscape. We recognize its landmarks. We clearly see the structures that shape perception, which loosens what no longer serves as we listen to the movement of life within us and come into deeper alignment with what is most true. All this becomes lived experience, and something is free to change. Presence deepens, freedom grows, relationship blossoms, and life is revealed as something we don't struggle against, but something we flow with in increasing harmony and mastery. So, wherever you are in your journey, perhaps the next step is simply this: to notice what is here now, to embrace it directly, and to begin again from there in endless curiosity and care. As you move on from here, you might begin to notice moments where your attention drifts and moments where it returns, moments where something opens and becomes a little more real. This kind of recognition doesn't need to be forced. It deepens naturally through attention, through contact, through practice. If you'd like to explore this work more deeply, you're welcome to visit me at passionateawakenings.com. You'll find ways to continue, including private sessions and a free turning point session where we can explore what's present for you and how this work might support you. As part of the summit, you also have the option to upgrade to VIP access, which gives you ongoing access to all of the presentations as well as the additional gifts from each of the presenters, including my upcoming program, Aligning Hearts, Restoring and Deepening Trust Through Presence, a 4-session live online intensive for couples. For now, just stay with what's already begun to move in your experience and enjoy the rest of the Global Mastery Summit.